Hi, welcome to the National Critics' Choice Online News. And today we have a very special guest this morning. And we have Dr. Nicole Taro-Ivish. She's going to release her new book called Eating Her Curries and Kueh, A Cultural History of Food in Singapore, which is in Southeast Asia and not China, folks. Dr. Nicole, please tell us more about your book. What inspired you to come up with this title, Eating Her Curries and Kueh?
So actually this wasn't my first pick of title. I wanted to call the book Eating the Nation, A Cultural History of Food in Singapore, but my publishers thought that Eating the Nation sounded a little bit cannibalistic, so I tried to think of a title that encompassed the fact that although there's a seriousness to the study of food, it's also something that's really pleasurable, that there's a little bit of whimsy to it. So the title, has a little bit of that sense of whimsy in it.
Now, in your experience writing this book, which is your favorite chapter and moment for you?
That's a really interesting question. I think that the chapter I enjoyed writing the most was about food advertising. And that's because I think advertising gives us a real sense of, they're often very visually lush images, and they're such explicit attempts to market ideas that for a scholar there's a lot of rich material to look at. But each of the chapters had things that were challenging and things that were pleasurable.
Now, speaking about pleasure, what kind of food have you tried in Singapore that you have actually enjoyed most, and you probably would not able to live without it?
Oh, chicken rice, no question. I adore chicken rice, and it is one of the things that I always think about when I think about coming back to Singapore. And I've had it in lots of other parts of the world. I've had it in Malaysia, I've had it in Australia, I've had it in New Zealand, I've had it in the US, and there is nothing like Singaporean chicken rice.
And speaking about chicken rice, have you tried cooking it?
I have, and I'm a pretty good cook, but it's not quite the same. And I think that's to do with the fact that there is some food that needs to be cooked in a quantity and a regularity. So what we might cook at home to serve 2 or 3 people is quite different than if you're cooking on a scale to serve many people.
And speaking about the mass production, what's your observation from the past of Singapore and present and moving forward to the future?
Observation in what
in terms
sense?
of for food that has transformed itself.
Yeah, so I think all food changes all the time. It's always evolving, it's not static. And anybody who cooks will know that even if you make something every day, some days it tastes different. It was more rainy, so your dough was a little bit moist, or it was a bigger onion, or it was a different variety because that's what they had. So always food changes. It changes from day to day, and it changes from decade to decade. And that's about ingredients, but it's also about us as consumers. Our tastes change, and so we look for different kinds of things in what we eat.
What kind of lessons that policymakers and regulators, as well as businesses who are in the business of street food or even to a scale of a restaurant, could learn from this book that you've written? What lessons can they actually observe, both political and economic?
I guess the political message of the book is that we assume that food is neutral, that it's not political, and food is always political, but what that politics is depends on the times and on individual issues. So that might be that food is a site of identity making or contestation of identity, or it could be that it's somewhere where we see economic pressures being expressed, or it can be the site, as in the colonial era, where we can see the powers of the system of empire playing out. So what products are available are, a product of trade and big political forces as well. So I think that I guess the lesson is that we have to be mindful of the context in which we live.
The power of assimilation, how important does it play and a role it has in Singapore in your observation? Because it seems that food itself have assimilated alongside with religion, especially in Southeast Asia, where Islam plays a very important role in Malaysia, in Singapore, and Brunei and Indonesia. And so therefore, most of the immigrants that has come to Singapore who are non-Muslims have somewhat adapt a new form of food palettes. Is that true in your observation?
So I think food is not just what we eat, but it's our engagement with the whole
community.
Yeah, the community and also the process of eating. So, for example, when we teach kids that when they're in a hawker centre, if they eat from a halal stall, they take their tray to a separate area, and that they have to be mindful of their plates and crockery. That's a site in which we're teaching good behaviour, right? How to be harmonious and how to be respectful. Those are important issues for everyone, regardless of whether the site of that is religion. Singapore's famous for its courtesy campaigns and so forth, and I think so. What we see is those things are played out around food. It's not just that it's not a one-way process.
Well, once again, folks, please do get her book, Eating Her Curries and Kueh, A Cultural History of Food in Singapore, which is published by the University of Illinois Press through Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, around the world, or at your nearest great bookstore at your university or at your hometown.
Available 15 December for pre-order on Amazon.
That's right. It will be available from December 2013. And please do encourage yourself, and you'll never know what kind of material you might get out of it. Once again, thank you, Dr. Nicole Teruievich, for your presence with the National Critics' Choice.
It's a pleasure.